Hey guys, welcome back to the Tukes and Tires YouTube channel. As always, I'm Zach, and this week we're getting my dad's wagon fired up with this LS. Hit it, Dad.
Hey, is that Timmy's?
Yeah, because we're in Canada, dude.
So you heard what we're trying to accomplish in today's video today. We're going to go over what's happened since the last video. It's just easier for me to let the old man work on it leisurely by himself, get stuff done. But we'll go over what he's done and what, some things I've helped along the way to get to this point. We're going to obviously try to get this thing moving today. Well, in this episode, running on its own power. So since last time, we've got exhaust, temporary exhaust kind of on it. These stock manifolds do fit. The passenger side is pretty decent, no issues there. The driver's side, it's got about a 1/4 inch gap in between the factory steering box there and, that manifold, so that does work. As it comes down to the frame, it's a little tight, but, it's doable. The stock oil pan, as you saw in the last video, we had to disconnect that steering linkage down there to make the motor actually slip in. But once we got the motor where it needed to be placed, we were able to hook that steering linkage back up, and that oil pan does work. You would have to do limiters on your steering, so for steering angle, because the bar does get close to the oil pan and actually does touch. But it's got about, I would say, 3/16 of an inch to where it would actually hit the stopper anyways. So if you didn't really care about that, you could live with that steering angle. Dad might end up doing a rack anyways, so that might not matter, or we might just customize a factory oil pan. But it does fit in there, and it has, I think, pretty good ground clearance anyways when you look at it. I mean, if you hit a high enough curb, you'd probably smoke it off, but probably live with that as well. Other things Dad's done since the last video, he's made up this custom little shifter linkage thing, so we'll probably lift it up so we'll be at, forehead banging height, but we'll get underneath it. I'll show you what he's made under there, but here is kind of pretty slick. So this is like a standard steering column. It's not for an automatic, but he's made it so that it'll obviously work for an automatic. So it's got this custom little shifting mechanism thing here. It'd be kind of hard to describe this to you guys, but basically it's got a bracket here. Well, you can see this is the factory thing where the shifter linkage would be originally attached to. He's made up this custom bracket that has got like holes in it here, and there's a pin. So for park and drive, it has a pin that will actually pop into, because when you, just like the standard, you got to pull on the shifter and it pushes this rod down and you're able to select a gear. We only have a hole for drive and park because we're not really worried about any other gear, but it does go into every other single gear, but just doesn't lock into place. That's one thing. The gas pedal is another thing. So a lot of guys ask me what throttle cable we use. So we just use one out of a, I don't know, like 99 to I think 05 Silverado. Don't quote me on that. Don't know if that's accurate for the years that the cable was in, but that's what we use. We seem to, it works the best. It's pretty much the exact same length that you need to get from your throttle body to, firewall. So works pretty slick. Dad made up this little custom bracket because this is a newer style intake and it would have never had a cable throttle body. But, that's just a jazz he made up there. It goes down, just drill the hole in the firewall over here. Goes in, looks pretty clean, just like the factory one in a truck will go in. That's pretty slick. But we'll go underneath the dash here if I can figure out how to open the door. But we've reused the factory gas pedal. I don't know if we can get in here. Oh, there we go. So you can see how it comes through the firewall there. And we just ended up making this bar, but here, I'll get the light tried to set up better there. Okay. So this is the factory rod that comes out here, and obviously it goes to 90s through the firewall. So we're basically just using that as a pivot point. And this piece that's actually cut off here, that's welded onto that, is actually off of a gas pedal out of a Silverado. So pretty much we just bent it into shape where we needed it to go and welded it to the existing pedal. And that makes, here, I'll get my hand out of the light. So you can see that pivots pretty nicely there, so we don't have to do anything too crazy. And now we're gonna show you guys how we're gonna run the harness through here, try to make it look as nice as possible. We'll show you the harness that we're gonna use, but so far I think that's all the things that, you know, we've done since the last video. We'll get it up in the air, show you that stuff underneath, but we'll do that and then we're gonna pull the harness out and we'll start seeing if we can get that laid on here. Okay, so we got it right at the height where I'm gonna smash my forehead off this because I'm gonna be looking at the camera. But now you can see kind of how much room we have here to that bar. It's not a lot, but it's gonna work temporarily to get this thing moved around, so that's all right. And then, so you'll see a lot of these style bars in like 80s Chevy stuff. I don't know what other era they come in. Basically, we have a parts van that's out of the 80s and we just rob everything off of it. So Dad, like, we were looking at designs on how that works for the shifter and it seemed to work pretty good for this. So basically it's got a, you know, Dad's gonna make a bushing, but for now it's just got a hole in the side there where the rod sticks in. And then it's got kind of like that factory style shifter rod that comes down from the column, and it's just got a cantilevered setup that twists that shifter to make it shift through the gears. So that's pretty slick. Dad's cross member he made up worked for that, so we got enough clearance on that. Got a temporary drive shaft under here, so once we get it running, we'll be able to get it to move. I don't know if you guys can see that better once I show it through there. So you can see it's just like a factory clip, and then it's got that kind of weird looking rod that tips that. So that should work pretty decent. What else can I show you while I'm down here? I don't know if you guys can see that up there, but we're gonna get a shot of that actually moving so you can see how that operates. It's pretty sweet. But now I think we're gonna get the harness out of this thing. Dad, what are you doing under here? Huh? Just messing around. But we're gonna get the harness out of its box and start laying it on the motor. So, you know, here we go. All right, give her, Dad. Yeah, shift it. Yeah, so you can see the holes there, and it's got a pin that basically just locks it into, that's drive, and the other hole is park. But it will go into every other gear. So we couldn't think of a better way to make that up, and Dad's made this style before, and it works perfectly fine, and you never have to worry about your transmission bouncing out of gear. So that's pretty slick. So we got the harness out here, and you can see the part number for it there. We bought the one with the transmission controller. So this has a 4L80 behind this 6.2. This should be able to control it, no problem. And that transmission fits into this factory tunnel, no problem. We'd even be able to unbolt it and take it out. There's that much room in there. You never have to pull the motor and training at the same time. So that's pretty wicked. But we've been using these Fitech harnesses on a couple of our builds now. Nothing wrong with any other harness that's out there in the market, and I don't know the differences in between all the aftermarket harnesses that are out there. This is just pretty reasonably priced, and we've used them before, so we're completely comfortable doing that. So to make this work, we're gonna get this thing pulled out of the box. Look at that, we even got some stickers. That's pretty cool. But this one has the new handheld, so we're going to go over the initial setup on the new handheld and basically show you how we're going to try to run it in this thing so it looks as clean as possible. So we'll get it pulled out and show you guys what it looks like. Okay guys, we're going to dig into this box. We've done, I think, 1 or 2 other unboxings of these Fitech harnesses. If you guys are new to this, it's pretty cinchy. I can do it. So obviously you guys can. Everything is basically labeled and they have pretty good instructions on how to do this stuff, but we're just gonna dig in, see what's in this box. Lacey already kind of wants the box, but show you guys what comes with it. All right, so obviously we're gonna start off. Look at that, Lacey. Look at these stickers you got. We got some stickers. We got instructions. It's telling us something. I'm not gonna read that, but pretty much it's gonna give you everything basically to make your engine run. So they give you some fancy brackets just in case you don't have a bung in your exhaust. We got 2 of those. We got, in this kit, came with 2 O2 sensors, or this is a, I freaking can't remember what they call those ones, but they're like O2 sensors, whatever. But we got the newer style handheld in here. There should be, this is a LS3 cam wire, obviously because it's on the front instead of the back, but they just make it so you can use whatever engine. There's a couple different injector harnesses in here. This thing is for holding the handheld. I wouldn't recommend using it. I've had nothing but bad luck with this suction cup. It drips if you got her in heat. Maybe if you reuse it, purpose it for something else, but that's all right. But yeah, they got a couple different injector harnesses. This one came with EV1 and EV6 plugs. We're going to be using the EV6 portion of them, what's on that motor over there. So that's all right. This is the transmission harness that came. This is obviously a transmission harness kit, so it came with it. You can buy one without. It's cheaper. What else is in here? Couldn't tell you what that is. Oh, that's your little jumper for your secondary O2 or whatever you want to call it. We got a fancy computer. It's got the black sticker on it instead of red. That's snazzy. When you hear that, Dad's saying that's pretty snazzy. And then obviously, Dad, quiet on the set. Lacey, look at, you got a box there now, Lacey. And then, I don't know what that is. But then we got the whole main harness. We're gonna get this thing out of the bag and thrown onto the car, and we're gonna show you how we're gonna run it in the car, but it's pretty easy. Like I said, everything is labeled on this, so it's pretty idiot proof. You can't really mess it up. We'll show you some of our tips and tricks once we get it thrown on there, what we do to make it work a little better, because there's just some things that they suggest you do and we do it differently or whatever, but we'll figure it out. But we're gonna get this thing thrown onto the car. At least you want that bag too. We'll get her in there and then show you guys how we're running it. So Lacey, you got bags and boxes. There you go. So the way we like to start this is obviously just laying everything out so you can see what you got. I just want to show you guys up close. So obviously, because we're doing an LS3, we're using this knock sensor plug. We already have one on the engine, but basically it just changes the position of where your knock sensors are. Instead of being underneath the valley cover or under the intake, they're on the side. So that's pretty cinchy. This is the EV6 plugs for the injectors. That's EV1. We're going to be using this one. They make it nice that it's separate from the main harness, so you can change them out if you ever change your injectors. But first thing to notice is this harness is all together, and the fuse box is pretty big. So the way you got to run this is you got to do it from the inside out, because obviously you want that inside the vehicle where it's going to stay nice and dry and not wet. So probably you guys noticed already, but on this, where we're going to run our harness out is pretty well right behind the intake down there. I don't know if you guys can see that hole down there, but what we're going to end up making is we're going to make a little cover, because on these things, they have the heater vent that just comes for the floor down underneath here, so you can see our hole with our grommet in it. Couldn't tell you where we got that grommet from. Maybe the plumbing section at Home Depot, maybe you could find something. But what Dad's done is he just made a little block off plate here, so that obviously the air is not going to hit the harness, and then we're going to run the harness up underneath the dash, and we're just going to make a nice little cover to cover the wires. So we're going to start by shoving all of our wires through that hole. Obviously this grommet can come out, so it makes the hole just a little bit bigger, but we're going to start shoving them from the inside out to the outside, doing all the small plugs and everything we can first. and then we'll figure out the inside stuff afterwards, and then start plugging stuff in. So I'm gonna do that now. Also, trusty old fuel bucket. So we got all the wires shoved through the hole now, and it's kind of looking like spaghetti. This is probably the point where people are like, what do I do with all this mess? Basically, you're just reading the tags. So obviously you can see here, this one's going to show us that it's coiled driver side. So basically we're just going to try to run this as neatly as possible where everything needs to be plugged in. Maybe have to pull some wire back through the inside, maybe tuck some underneath the intake, but we're just going to get everything tidied up, and then we're going to come back to probably once we're going to be maybe doing some handheld stuff, because plugging all this stuff in is pretty self-explanatory, but we're going to get that done, and then we'll be coming back to handheld stuff. So our wiring harness is all tidied up now, so you can see how we have it kind of ran in there nice and neatly. You can see the front cam plug in there, it's run up, and then it goes to the back to where it's plugged in the back. The knock sensor plug is also in the back. Some of the plugs on this harness are kind of tricky and don't like to work very good, so you're probably going to get frustrated, just like I did. But, you know, just take your time. You'll get them plugged in. We're going to run a temporary fuel line just for now. So Dad's got it ran through there. It's going to come out to our fuel bucket underneath the dash. All we got to do yet is just plug the handheld in. You can see we just have our wiring harness laid in there right now, just temporary. We just have a switch panel just underneath where there's just an on and off switch for the keyed ignition, and then a start button. So we're going to get that plugged in, and then we're going to start doing some stuff on the handheld. Also, for our intake air temperature sensor, what we always like to do is there's usually a lot of like evap stuff on this intake and the older truck intake. So we usually just bore this hole out that's like right here for that stuff and put our air temperature sensor. It makes it just enough wiring to go from that to your cooling temperature sensor, or water temperature sensor I should say, and it makes it nice and neat here so that all you're going to do now is just have a tube going wherever you're going to go. So just thought I'd throw that in there. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see what's going on here. I know it's kind of dark and the screen's kind of bright, but we're basically going to set this engine up now, and we're doing this all with the key on. We just have a switch, but you know, you get the gist of it. So the first thing I went and did on this handheld, just so that we have an initial tune in it, is I went down to right call to ECU, and then I went down for our application, I went to 58X, so that's like the the crank reluctor wheel, how many teeth it is, and then we're running a 4L80, and then obviously it just gives us a base tune of this for the injectors. So we did that, so it was 100%, and then what you're going to want to do next is you're going to want to go to Fitech initial setup, and then we're going to go to engine setup, and then on every one of these lines you're going to want to click it and send to ECU. So I have a pretty good website here. I'll probably leave it in the link down below. But if you're trying to look for injectors, I know this isn't going to show up very good, but basically this website gives you the part number on the back of the injectors and tells you how many pound per hour they are. I'll leave that down in the description down below, so you guys, if you're trying to have, you know, figure out how many pound per hour your stock injectors are, you can use this website. It's pretty handy. And if you don't know how many cubic inches your engine is, just go to Google and type in liters to cubic inches, and it's going to tell you that. So we have 378. It changed it to 77. I have no idea why. But then we put in mild cam, and then our rev limiter to 6600, and then we're targeting 750 for our intake or our idle RPM once it's warm. And then obviously we have a 58 reluctor wheel on the crank. So on every single one of these lines, like I said, I'll just demonstrate. So you just click it, and it should say sending to ECU, and then it should say send successful. And once we have all our information set up, for now I'm not going to set up the transmission stuff, but I could probably show you how to do that. So we're just going to go to automatic transmission, and then obviously we would put in tire size, gear ratio, then it would say other, just if you're running like a manual automatic, so not an electronically controlled transmission. But obviously on this line, well, we don't want that, but we would click it so it's a 4LX, style transmission. So we'd send that, and then we would send 4L80 to it as well. So now once we have all this information sent to the computer, we're going to turn off our power that goes to the ECU. Let it sit here for a second. You'll hear it make some funny noises. And once you hear, obviously because I have the harness right beside me, I can hear it when the relay clicks off for the main power. So basically what I do is just to check, once it's completely off, I'll click this again, and it should say no response from ECU, so that's good. So then I'll click back, and then, okay, we'll go back here. Listen to me. Then we'll turn this back on. Wait for it to click, and then we can go back to initial setup, and then I always go and I just check to make sure all my settings are still to what they are, and it all stayed on this screen. And then on our engine setup screen, all that information stayed the same. For some strange reason, the cubic inches keeps changing, but that should be close enough for what we're trying to get to. So now we're going to go see if this thing's going to start up. Okay guys, so went through the initial setup. We bled the gas. You can see it shot all over the windshield, but basically just to get the air out of the system, so it's going to want to try to help it start. So now we're going to see if it's going to fire up. Oh. Come on.
Let me bleed it some more.
Put something over top of it this time. It's shooting all over the place. Some air in it.
Then we'll click the switch on.
Okay. Sounded pretty good there. You got her. There you go.
Still turned on, right?
No, you gotta flip the switch. Oh. Turn the switch off. It wants to go, but I don't know. I don't know if we got some dead injectors or it's not just cranking over fast enough. So we're gonna see hooking up another battery here. It's gonna give it enough cranking amps to start. Okay.
Where's that switch?
Come on. You wanna go. friggin' quick start.
Or gasoline.
You think it's still not getting gas?
I don't know. I know we had to juice it before when we fired it last time. Yep. Well, there you go, guys. Friggin' ran. We had to juice it up a little bit. I don't know if it's got some sticky injectors just from sitting from last time when we fired it up. We're probably going to do this process a couple times of trying to get it to go, heat up, so maybe like work some gas through the injectors, maybe some coils, something with that. I don't know, but it sounds pretty wicked, so that's pretty awesome. But I think that's where we're going to leave it for now. I really appreciate all you guys watching and subscribing. You guys are the best. Remember, leave me a comment down below if you need to know any more information, or hit me up on social media, Facebook, Instagram. I'll do my best to answer you with any questions, but I'll try to leave as much information down in the description down below, just in case you guys are looking for that stuff. Like I said, where I find out what size injectors we're running on all these LS projects, so when I, putting it into the handheld, that we get it right. But all right, guys. So yeah, I think that's gonna do it for now. We'll see you guys next time. But as always, don't forget to salute the beaver.